I think that's what Midland is so special.
I
Like,
agree.
I absolutely love this town. I mean, being from a large, massive city
Mhm.
like New York and Brooklyn, I mean, I would never be this successful if I was living in something like that. I would
Mhm.
never been able to start something like that back there. And thank God I met my husband and I got the opportunity to do this career. Yes, it was breed on one child that gave me the adrenaline to go and take the risk. But that is what I see in every business owner in Midland, whether you're in oil and gas or you're not.
Hi, my name is Jessica McCoy, and I'm your host here at Raising Midland, a podcast for parents in the Permian. Today, I have my dear friend Gina Marie Soto, who's a family entertainment owner. Just want to make sure I got that right for her. This lady does everything. She owns a couple franchises going all the way up to Lubbock, to Odessa, to Midland. Let me tell you right now, this woman knows a lot about what to do in our community when it comes to your children having fun. Have it be doing the XP League, which I'm learning it's a gaming league, which is fascinating. I'm learning all about that with Fortnite. She also owns a trampoline park, Urban Air, and she also owns a gym called Little Gym, which is located in Midland. And she also has a couple more other franchises that she just purchased. So help me introduce my friend, Gina Marie. How's it
Hi,
going?
Jessica.
Girl, we go way
That is a
back.
great
Thanks.
introduction. Whoa. A
It's
little
hard. I feel like you
overwhelming.
got a long
Yeah.
resume, friend.
And I've known you a long time and you've seen me from the very beginning. So it's exciting to be sitting here and seeing your dream because you've seen my dreams. And I'm excited for your ventures. And it's just, I get so excited to meet with, because I don't get to see you very often, but when we do, big hugs. But the fun of us and how where we came from like 2018 and where we
Mhm.
are now and our children growing in this community and we want the best for this community is truly why we are successful women in this
Yes.
town. Period. End of story.
True. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you just put
Summed it up.
everything I just meant to say
Yes.
in like that little good close snippet. I
Uh-huh.
love that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want our audience to know is like how far we go back. So you said
Yeah.
2018, right?
Yep.
So that was when I had just had my son. And I remember calling you and being like, Gina Marie, listen, I love the Little Gym. And you had just started the Little Gym.
Mhm.
And I said,
Yep.
how do we do this? I'm noticing a gap
Mhm.
in the fact that there's just not a lot of swim lessons in the way that I would want
Mhm.
to actually pay for my son to do swim lessons.
Yeah.
And you let me pick your brain. I mean, ever since then, since 2018, I have literally sent you voice memos and texts, and you've just been such a great resource. So thank you for that.
Oh,
But
vice versa.
thanks.
Yeah.
But I think truly what you just said is that's what makes our community so unique is literally, I think we've both said this multiple times. We don't know what we're doing, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. There are some very amazing, intelligent, cool moms that kind of got stuck here because their husbands love oil and gas. And we come with this opportunity of we want a good community for our kids. And then you put your heart into it and you own a business, you're going to be successful. So that truly is what happened in 2018 when I got Little Gym. I met you and I thought, you know what, with swim and the capability of the Little Gym, it was like a physical activity that we needed to strengthen our kids' grip. We went through the COVID world together.
Yes.
Remember, we had physical therapy was shut down, and you were helping children make sure they were safe around water, and I was making sure they were safe in my gym. And doing physical development, cognitive development, and social development was really stifling us
Yeah.
in our community during COVID. And I literally opened my doors on January 20th of 2020, and then I was shut down 68 days later with more than 500
Gosh, I remember
moms
that.
in the gym.
I remember
Yeah.
that. So just to fill people in,
Mhm.
Gina Marie and I were both. So I was pregnant at the time in 2019, going into 20.
Mhm.
And I just remember being like, what are we going to do? Because I had just started my business. You just bought your franchising rights for your first franchise in Midland, which was the Little Gym.
Yep.
And I remember both of us being like, what do
Whoa.
we do? Because
Whoa.
truly,
Yeah.
no one in any industry knew what we were going to do
Right.
because especially for something that's so community involved. I mean, the Little Gym hosts a variety of classes that basically require parents to get together.
Correct.
And you think of little kids and their jam hands, right? Like
Yeah.
it was just, we didn't know what to do and how to like interact with one another. Truly, I would attest that my success during 2020 had a lot to do with what you gave me as advice. And one of those things was, all you can do is what you can do. And I remember you just being very clear about that. And it's always always so nice to have, especially a mother yourself,
Mhm.
a mom who is a couple years ahead of you. Our kids are not all that far apart in age, but you're just in a different stage with his school and
Mhm.
different age groups, but we're not all that different. So let's talk to people about
Right.
how did you even get the idea
Mhm.
to invest in Little Gym? Because
Yeah.
in 2018, both you and I did not know what the future would look like. I'm sure both of us would look like at each other being like, why are we, you're making a swim school. Okay. You're investing in Little Gym.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have 2 years later where our entire business is near. I mean, like
Mhm.
you and I are probably one of the few that
Yeah.
are, I know several businesses that have gone down since 2020.
Mhm.
So talk to me about what that process looked like about investing into Little Gym.
Yeah, Little Jim. I was in the oil field industry, and got pregnant and said, I don't want to go into the oil field anymore. So, with that financial opportunity I had, that money really pivoted me toward having a business that involved my child, that I could make my own schedule, be a business owner, and take the qualities of an entrepreneurship that I had before in the oil field and put it into children development. So, I knew of the Little Gym. Little Gym's been around for 46 years, so it's a very strong staple item with curriculum that has tested over 50 years, right? So you're sitting there knowing that your franchise that you're purchasing can happen in Midland. There's children here. There's nothing here. There's something that can be said for we need physical, cognitive, and social development for our kids. So that is what Little Gym is. You can start them at 4 months old. You can go to 12 years old, but the mother child experience and parent experience needed to happen in Midland.
Mhm.
We weren't finding any classes that were together with the parent, the father, the child in an area, a safe place, a clean space that could run around a big red mat and also understand how to do the cognitive, the physical, and the social development, and really get moms that were kind of planted here without knowing anyone and put them together in a room, a big gym that had the same age child. So I could meet a mom that I never met before in the gym with their 1 year old. I didn't have to worry about a 3 year old, but my child was one and your child's one. And we could have a friendship and we could build that friendship. So really the Little Gym is, yes, great for children, but the goal was for me to put the moms in a place that they could become friends and there could be a bonding social interaction with community involved. So I really like put that into focus when COVID happened because again, 2020 happened, January 20th, I opened of 2020 Little Gym. That became the pivotal point for me when COVID did happen because if I could get the moms back where they wanted to get together so bad to be in a space together after COVID because they were in lockdown and they didn't feel comfortable coming out with their kids, if I made it safe and clean and I really did have to gain respect of the moms, and I think I did that. I feel like I gave it my all. I
No,
worked my
you
80
did.
hours
You
and
did.
I
Hold
tried
on.
my hardest. Like,
You
I just
did.
wanted to make sure I could bring my own son to this place
Mhm.
every day at 3 years old and show them I could truly be clean for you guys. I could be safe for you guys. I could bring a good staff to you guys. And then we could all sit on the big red mat and have a good time. And you guys could leave with a friendship bonus and your children learn something great. So I learned that this franchise, yes, it's about great classes, but really Little Gym truly is for, I think, in Midland, a mom hub. And I feel like that made it very evident after COVID because everyone's still friends. I mean, there are people that brought their kids at 4 months old that are now 5, and their best friends were met on the big red mat at the Little Gym. So I think Midland just needed that. Hopefully in Odessa, that will come to fruition. Same thing for them. That will be built probably in 2025. And now, Lubbock has been around, that Little Gym in Lubbock has been around for 13 years.
You just took
And
that over.
I just got that over and I just bought that in March, took it over and I feel like it just needed some tender loving care and it really needed to come back after COVID with a new owner. And I just felt like it was too good in Lubbock not to be successful.
Yeah.
There's something that we're just missing. And we just need to get back to that community and show them that Little Gym is there and they used it when their kids were little. It's just a transition of community sometimes. You need
Yeah.
to find that young mom again up there, and so I'm looking for that.
I think what I remember calling you specifically, I think it was July of 2020.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, no, I think it was probably right after 2020 shut down. That's right. And I remember saying, Gina Marie, I'm like really worried about these kids because what I
Yeah.
saw as a swim coach was that kids And I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm sure you could probably agree with this.
Mhm.
We haven't recovered in regards to the physical capabilities of what our children had prior
Yep.
to 2020. But basically, and I know a lot of teachers and PTs can also probably agree, but my kids at age 3 were able to kick, hold on to the wall easier,
Mhm.
hold their breath easier, float better
Mhm.
prior to 2020. And I've been
Mhm.
doing this since I was 13 years old.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a long enough time for me to be able to know what's like typically normal.
Mhm.
And then I remember calling you being like, what are we going to do? I remember asking you, are you seeing this too? And you said, oh my goodness, finally someone is saying out loud,
Mhm.
kids were not getting outside.
Mhm.
And because people just, I think 2020 created some isolation, but then people got really comfortable with that isolation. And then what we once had prior to 2020 was more community. People were going to parks.
Mhm.
And we see that in so many other aspects of these kids' lives. Like we see the social and emotional development in schools. It's been a huge issue. Teachers are talking about it all the time,
Yep.
but mostly physical development.
Yeah.
And I remember we created a mobility
We
class
did. Mhm.
because basically what we wanted to do is we knew that people were probably not going to go to swim lessons
Mhm.
because they were worried about 2020 and the
Mhm.
pandemic. We also knew that your business was not going to have a lot of people coming in because we saw that, right? Because
Mhm.
people were scared,
Yep.
regardless of how you feel about it, right? It's just what it was at the time.
Mhm.
But when we did that, we were able to evaluate what kids were going through.
Yeah.
We evaluated the needs of the families. And I think we've both talked about this too, as we started to realize we need to make our entire business models focused on what moms need, not necessarily, which I know you and I both
Yep.
knew
Yeah.
because you invested into the little gym because you were like, I want this.
Mhm.
I would want to go, right?
Mhm.
That's what I did with me, right? With
Mhm.
my business. And it's all about centering any business for women and children and dads and grandparents, even
Mhm.
on what is practical and how can we as businesses meet them where they were at. So I really
Yes.
appreciated that
Agreed.
opportunity to do that mobility class.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. I know we are huge fans in our
Mhm.
family of the Little Gym. So let's talk about the Little Gym franchise
Okay.
before we move on to Urban Air.
Sure.
One of the services that you guys provide. So I know that you guys have been around, you said 56 years. Is that what you said?
So
Or
46 years.
46 years.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and I know when we first talked about the synergy between you and I as businesses is that the Little Gym was started with the mindset of adapting and incorporating physical therapy
Right.
into play because
Mhm.
the guy who started the Little Gym
Mhm.
knew and often saw what we were seeing in 2020, which was children were losing their mobility. And so mobility is important. A lot of people
Right.
don't realize that. Hitting those developmental milestones
Yes.
are oftentimes superseded or preceded
Yes.
with movement. So,
Agreed.
what kind of services does the Little Gym provide in
Mhm.
order to incorporate mobility and social and emotional development?
So the classes are broken into certain age groups. So that way you're in a room seeing the same age group of your child with another. Not to compare, but more of the class is broken into the warm up where and also with the social environment of having the same age around each other. So it starts off with we do sign language, we sing a song, we use shakers, we use musical instruments, and that idea gets the class going. And so then they do a warm up. So they warm up is the walking, the running, the jumping, the skipping. And so it's mobility, physical.
Which,
Then
in case people don't realize, those are actually developmental milestones
correct.
that if anyone's taken their child to the pediatrician, they're usually asked, can your child hop on one leg? Can they
Yes.
skip?
Yes.
Can
Can they
they
forward roll?
Yeah, can they
Yeah.
forward roll?
Mhm.
Can they pinch, a pencil
Mhm.
or like grab a block?
Yes.
So these are things that you're doing in the class.
Yes, and then they go into after the warm up, they go into stations. So
Mhm.
each station, there's 3 stations throughout the little gym. The gym is set up as a gymnastics location, like studio. They have a beam, they have the bar, and they have the floor. So what we do is we are teaching 3 skills per class. Those 3 skills need to be hit that week. So we have unlimited classes.
Mhm.
You can go once a week if you have a certain age, and at least each week that you go, you're going to develop that child. When you go home, you should physically work on that developmental skill. It could be cognitive too, where we're we're singing ABCs, or
Mhm.
we're doing 1, 2, 3, or we have scarves where we're doing red and colors
Yeah,
and
color
the
analysis
colors.
or like color
Yes.
identification.
Yes. And a lot of moms realize that this is crazy, but during COVID, when they're sitting in their house, right? And your house is not like the little gym. It doesn't have purple walls, it doesn't have green walls, and it doesn't have yellow walls. The kids were actually, by the pediatrician telling me this, the pediatricians were telling me that the children were having psychedelic trips,
I
basically.
can imagine.
Their eyesight was not developed because they were living in a house of white walls. They came into the little gym and they were freaking out. They would not put their feet on a red mat. They did not know what that was. Did
Yeah.
not know what. So it was creepy, crazy,
You know
honestly. It
what?
was
That's
wild.
so interesting that you say that because I saw a really big shift
Mhm,
of the children who were like born in 2020
mhm,
to like, I guess they'd be like 3 or 4 right now. That generation is, I mean, obviously I'm not a pediatrician, but like just observationally,
mhm.
those kids are so, it's almost like they're terrified of everything.
Yeah, there's a
Like the
scare factor.
loud
There's a scare factor.
noises,
Mhm.
like they're just they're heightened sensory
Mhm.
development, like they're heightened sensory seeking. So
Yes.
they're all just kind of, it seems like they just don't know what to do with themselves.
Mhm.
So I can appreciate that
Yep.
where they, if they weren't seeing color, if they weren't getting their bodies moving, if
Yes.
they didn't, if they weren't exposed to it,
Yeah, or
they're,
or seeing their own type of person.
yeah.
Like they did not know what to do with another child. Like when we had the 2-year-olds come in
Mhm.
that were through COVID or now, now it feels like they're kind of rolling out of it, I guess. But
Yeah.
the 2-year-olds, whoa, like
Yeah.
they did not know what another child was. So they might have had their first, their first child and they're 2. The parents were trying to get them around social interaction, which is also a little gym. Three-dimensional learning is what we do. So it's physical, cognitive, and social. So social was a big component. A lot of the moms said, I need to come just because my kid has not been around anybody for a year and a half.
Mhm.
Mind blowing. Okay, here we go. We knew this child was coming in. They had not been around anybody except their parents for a year and a half.
Mhm.
Typically, it was a scared or it was a physical and very physical. And so we really had to work on those kids. And it made it so like a safe space. And so a lot of the kids and the moms at Little Gym, I think when you knew you were coming to Little Gym, you were working on something amazing for your child. You knew that you were seeing something, or the pediatrician was offering that
Mhm.
opportunity for you to go to a safe place and be around them. And it just was just child development that you're working for your child. And I think if as a mom, whether you're in Midland or anywhere, I think Little Gym is the only franchise that really truly watches that
Yes.
and creates that. And you have teachers that are teaching you sign language. So if you can't communicate with your child, you have a teacher that's teaching you sign language to
Mhm.
communicate with your 1-year-old. You have a teacher in every class, every age that can work with you to understand your children. So there are kids that are now 7, 8 years old,
Mhm.
7 years, or we're on year 5. So they might have come in when they were 2
Yeah.
that are 7 years old now in gymnastics that literally were
Grew
not
up.
doing forward rolls and growing up in Little Gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, that's super important. But, we have things that my parents don't have. You don't trust a babysitter. You don't have a
Yeah.
good babysitting team here. Your mom and dad are not in this town,
Mhm.
so where are you going to go and have a date night? Where are you going to rehash that marriage that you had? Where are you going to
Mhm.
enjoy that space with your husband? Go out and have a dinner with your husband. We have parent survival night where you can actually drop off your child in a safe place. It's $30. You can't find a babysitter for less than, $20 an hour, and get them into a space where people are going to be watching them. You can go have a 3 hour, even a grocery shopping thing with your
Mhm.
husband by yourself and enjoy a space by yourself with, someone that you need to connect with. That's important too. And so
Yeah.
we were offering that in regards to, just parent survival night so the parents could reconnect.
Mhm.
They could actually, and mothers were dropping off their kids that couldn't go into the OBGYNs with
Yep.
their other child.
Yep.
We were offering services that were crazy that we knew, not that I was going against the grain because I did wear a mask, but I really fought as an owner, a business owner of my own business, to know what I could push the envelope during that time.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was giving a service to those physical therapists because every place was shut down.
Uh-huh.
And physical therapists were coming to me saying, I need physical therapy sections. To do my physical therapy space in, the hospitals are shut down. You can't go in. These kids still needed to walk. These
Yes.
kids still had to learn how to do these things. And we
Mhm.
talked about the mobility class. We were looking at kids gripping on
Yeah,
a
we
bar.
were shocked. I mean, like
They're not
Gina,
gonna be able to grip on a bar. They're not gonna
yeah,
grip on the pool. And the pool was coming up
I
because it was
know.
March. And then you were telling me in June, we have kids that, the following year that couldn't even grip on the
Yeah,
pool.
it was scary. I remember you and I being like, it was almost like we were living in two parallel universes
Mhm.
because you were seeing it, I was seeing it, but like we didn't understand if we were seeing the same thing or if we were the only people seeing it.
Yeah.
So one of
Yeah.
the things that I think was really eye-opening to me was there's just such a shift. And I think what you were talking about too was so important. You were talking about specifically that, you were servicing a need for the community that
Mhm.
maybe wasn't being articulated by the parents.
Right.
So like for instance, you noticed that physical therapists needed space to do their physical therapy
Yep.
appointments.
Yep.
So
Speech therapist.
speech
Mhm.
therapists, you offered that to them
Yep.
during 2020.
Yep.
Then guess what? That parlayed into other services that you still
Right.
have to this day. So you
Yes.
have your classes that
Yep.
occur weekly where
Mhm.
parents can get together based off of age group.
Yep.
You also have your parents' night out, which
Right.
happens, I've noticed, maybe twice a month,
Twice a month. Yeah.
on Fridays. And
And then we have camps. So the
and
camps go on.
camps. Hold on, let's talk about camps because like
Crazy camps.
you know me, I will text Gina Marie and I'm
All the
like,
time.
all of them,
Yep.
sign them
You're
up,
there every
all
time.
of them.
Yep.
And for me and my husband, it's an investment. But what matters is because I am a working parent, and
Mhm.
you and I both know that
Yep.
the demographics of Midland have changed so much in the last even 10 years. I was reading what the Midland Development Corporation says, and they're saying that the majority of Midland homes are dual earning parents, which means both parents are working. So guess what? When MISD is doing their COVID makeup days back in 2021,
Mhm.
where randomly there would be a week of school
Yep.
gone.
Yep.
Guess what? If I work for ConocoPhillips and my husband's working at Diamondback, what are we going to do for childcare?
Yeah.
If I have, whatever shut down. And at
Mhm.
the time, childcare was not really ebbing and flowing with the MISD schedule. That has since changed.
Yeah.
But what really I think has been the biggest thing for the little gym, just as a consumer, because I've literally been a customer of yours since you started.
Yes.
The camps have been a lifesaver. So for me, what the cool thing about the little gym is that you guys always follow the MISD calendar. So what I've loved about that is when I know that there's some random day
Mhm.
like professional development, I know that I can at least I can do a double camp, which means
Yeah.
you have the morning session and then the afternoon session, which means I have childcare from 8 a.m. to about 6.
Yep.
And guess what? Both of those sessions are two different themes,
Yep.
which means my kids, who I love them dearly, they get bored easily. They're not going to be bored
Mm-mm.
being there
Nope.
for a significant amount of time. Then
Right.
guess what? What I want is my kids, whenever I pick them up, is I want them begging to go back.
Mhm.
Okay. I have never not had that with my kids going to the little gym. And I'm not just trying
Thank
to
you.
provide this as a puff piece
Yeah.
for you. I
Thank you.
genuinely think that the camps has literally saved
Yeah.
not only my work life, but
Mhm.
also my mental health. I mean, I struggled with postpartum depression. I went to those classes
Yeah.
initially with my son.
Mhm.
And I know my mom and my mother-in-law took him too, because that's a great way to get, grandparents involved even. But for a class like one of your classes that you do, it was so nice because just like what you were saying, you're creating a community of mothers that felt isolated. But guess what? We're human. That's not just going to happen
Yep.
during a pandemic.
Yep.
That's a human innate need
Mhm.
where parents need to be able to connect. And I cannot think of a more vulnerable population than a first-time mom.
Yes.
You do not know what you're talking about.
Ugh,
I
it's hard.
always tell my friends who are
Challenging.
pregnant or about to have a baby, I say only listen to moms that have 3 or more kids, because I feel like they just know what to worry about. And I'm an only kid. So like for me, my mom, I love my mother. She worries about everything. And it's so easy to do that,
Mhm.
and I feel like what your business does is create a community where maybe that mom of 3 who came there to hang out with her newest baby can offer that advice to that struggling mother.
Mhm.
I know I do that daily as a business owner that works with families.
Yep.
So I wanted to like let everybody
you.
know that your camps are
Yeah.
like a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think what came from COVID, it stayed with COVID, which a lot of little gyms don't do this, but 8:45 to 4, you can bring your child.
Mhm.
That's 3 potty trained,
Mhm.
3 and up to 6, if they're still not in kindergarten.
Oh, your pre-K program.
The pre-K program. Yeah. So
Yes.
they entitle like the group, the way that we do this is 8:45 to 4. You can do a camp. You do the MDO program, which we call it MDO, but it's the learning process. So you are actually having your child enjoy the gym in increments of a lunch bunch. You can bring your grandma, you can bring your child to lunch a date with all the other kids. You don't have to leave them. You can drop them off literally from 8:45 to 4. You have the opportunity to come into the little gym, go and drop off and go and grocery shop and come back in 3 hours and do that. You literally
Truly
have 8:45 to 4.
amazing.
You have a babysitter at
Yes.
any day you want it from Monday through Friday. And that's what COVID gave me, was that this opportunity to pick these camps, add these camps in, do a lunch bunch in the middle of the day. Moms just want to enjoy a space, because just imagine coming to Midland, you have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and you have no 3-year-olds, let's say 3-year-old, and you have not socialized or have anyone to hang out with. You go to the park, they're not the same age. You go to the little gym, you walk in with your lunch, your Chick-fil-A lunch in a bag. You get to hang out with 15 other 3-year-olds,
Mhm.
4-year-olds, and you get to enjoy that little hour and a half. Your kid gets to have some group of friends,
Mhm.
and you get to hang out. And the moms get to hang out for maybe an hour and a half, and you leave. So
Mhm.
you're developing that child to kind of get away from you a little bit,
Yep.
to cut the umbilical cord a little bit,
Yep.
to show them the kid that's in front of them. Hey, there's another
True.
3-year-old, and we're going to eat lunch. And then also you can step outside of the room while they're eating lunch, let them bond with the other kids. So it starts them working on getting into a pre-K
Yes.
program or getting into, a kindergarten environment.
Mhm.
So a lot of the 4-year-olds that come to us are needing to disconnect from a mom that's had them home most of the time.
Desperately.
Yeah. And then you get them into that space. And so to me, that we call it the MDO program, but it's offered every day, Monday through Friday, 8:45
I didn't
to
know that.
4. And
I mean, like,
that's,
I knew that,
yeah,
but, like,
that's what your
it's
camps
different
are
when I see
basically.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's a camp thing. So
That
try
is
that.
so cool because, one of the other things that you guys do is that I really love is your staff.
Yeah. The staff is amazing.
Like,
I don't know how
what's
we get our unicorns, but we get tons of
but
unicorns. I work with a ton of
you
unicorns. All my
always
businesses
have
are unicorns.
unicorns, and I
It's
mean,
amazing. Yeah.
it's so unique, and I think it has more to do with like your leadership style.
Mm,
So, in my opinion, it's one thing to purchase a franchise like you were saying in Lubbock,
mm,
right? So like it just needed tender love and care.
yeah.
I think it's everything to do with whoever's at the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Obviously, you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think what's beneficial, just talking on the more business side, is if you can identify what your customer needs and take yourself out of it.
Hmm.
Like you can obviously like what you started Little Gem
Hmm.
and bought the franchise because you were like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Right.
I want this
That's
for
what
my
I did
son.
with Head Above
Yeah.
Water.
Yep.
So I think what's important is doing that. But then what I really think has been really inspirational for me as my own business was actually seeing you adapt with your consumer
Hmm.
and look at what we're at now. So
Yeah.
like now you offer those daily classes, you offer the pre-K program, you offer the camps and the parents night out program. Um, I want to talk about because some of the people on, I know Midland Moms Facebook page or any of those little Facebook social
Hmm.
communities,
Hmm.
they always talk about where is there an indoor space for me to play
Yep.
with my child? And obviously the Little Gym offers that
Yep.
for these families.
Yep.
But, what is the importance just in general of a community having an indoor play space?
I think that, I mean, with my son, I think you don't grow out of a little gym, but you learn how to, you do everything you need to do during the years of probably up to 6 or 7 years old. But when a boy, especially a boy like my boy, comes to be 7, and you go into the larger markets, in Dallas and Arlington, and just the areas where you're like, oh man, and we didn't have this. Why don't we have
Mhm.
a play space or a trampoline park? Or why can't my son ride in a go-kart? I mean, I don't know. I just saw all the little gym kids, and they're all getting older, and I thought, man, my son needs this indoor activity play area. And so I'm lucky enough that the franchise has a sister franchise called Urban Air, and that's when
Good
literally being
segue.
the segue. You're welcome. But Little Gym is literally the starting point. And so in 2021, I went to a conference for Little Gym, and we all were purchased. All the Little Gyms were purchased under Unleashed Brands, and Unleashed Brands is the mothership. And Michael Browning Jr., who is a genius, decided through COVID that he wanted his wife and every mom to have an app on their phone that they could literally go and start with a child area, a little child play area, which is Little Gym, start their day off going to Little Gym with their little kid, then going to their big kid, going to Urban Air, then going into esports gaming with XP League, then going to Premier Martial Arts and doing their karate, martial arts. And then as they age, go into Class 101 or go into Sylvan Learning. And so this man literally bought all these franchises and put them one under one umbrella. And that's what Unleashed Brands is. And so I
Genius.
Yeah, genius. Like little Midland mom, like went into debt. Thought, you know
That's how
what?
you start a business, man.
I'm in debt, let me tell you. And I love it. And I think more debt makes more opportunities.
Mhm.
But I learned that little gym, I was the very first little gym owner that came away from that conference where we in 2020 walked away and I said, I want to open an urban air for Lorenzo. I need an
Lorenzo's
urban
her
air.
son for anybody who
Lorenzo's my
doesn't.
son. Yeah. And
He's the
he needed
coolest kid
this.
ever.
He needed it though. He needed that energy burn. It wasn't a spoiled thing. It was more of all these boys that were a little gym. Where are they going to go now? Like, where are we going to go
Girl,
run our energy out?
being a boy mom myself, like,
You got to find that energy
okay,
burn.
there's the type of boy moms that are, and I'm not mom shaming, but there's the type of boy moms that are not self-aware about their son, and they're the ones that like never get to get out, and like they really need to get that energy out.
Yeah.
But then there's the moms who are self-aware that are like, my son is going to break a wall if he does not get out of my house.
Yeah.
One of the best advice I got was from one of my friends, Nicole Brown, and she told me that her dad used to say that boys need a job or they need they need to be outside. So
Yeah.
that's how you wear them out. So you either give them a chore or you make them be outside for as long as you can until they are worn out. And man could not ring more true.
Yeah.
So let's get into the, let's get like the urban air. I mean, my son is just like a little like jumping bean. Like he loves urban air.
Yeah.
And what he also really likes is he's also really into like old school Nintendo gaming with my husband, because my husband loves like all of his childhood games.
We got that at the house. Yep.
So you literally created a boy paradise, but also my little girl, second born, like girl, she is.
Oh, the girls are crazy here.
Girl,
because they're feisty. I love it. It's
but she also has my genetics, which like she's like, all right, let's go. So she can like almost hang, and she's only 3. She's hanging out with the 6 and 7-year-olds, you know?
Because little Jim is little Jim, right? But I always say, like, if you're gonna have a birthday party at Urban Air, please don't have a 3-year-old birthday party because it makes me scared as a mom. And I'm like, because they're I don't want to take your money, y'all. Just go to little Jim, and then when they get to be 4 or 5, like because there's a space of like Urban Air is a bigger kid environment, and so I got hated on because I was like, well, where's toddler time? Well, it's dangerous, and I don't want your babies to get hurt. So really, it was like more of a protection of the mom things. Which you can do jumperoo, but honestly, like only 10 people show up. You can't keep the lights on. You understand these bills at Urban Air are crazy. So like I would love to be able to do that if we have little gym next to Urban Air in Odessa, which you're working on. Little gym next to Odessa, Urban Air together, Urban Air and little gym together would be amazing. We can keep open, we can have that like little connection through the same door. So that might work, but it wouldn't have worked at the space. Urban Air is for the next age level. And so with that, I mean, the only thing I'll literally like gloat about is that I'm the one that really invested in this town to put something as like a $5 million piece.
100%.
Like I will put that on my name. Like I'm the one that went to the bank, 7 banks, and they all turned me down.
Can I tell you that you are the entire reason why that I feel comfortable investing into my own company? And I will tell you, I mean, again, this is not meant to be a puff piece. It's just genuinely, I want to show my gratitude that I don't think I could have people taking my business seriously if it weren't for you and other businesses who have invested back into our community. I mean, the fact that we have child-specific businesses like yours, like what people don't realize is that there's so much data to prove that it's a safe investment to invest in anything to do with children and youth and teenagers. Okay. But the problem is like, Andrew Jones from the Boys and Girls Club and I were talking about this. There has been such a growth period where the older generation of Midland is what made Midland get here, right? But they're retiring, right? Like they're in the second part of their lives. Like they don't have the energy to go out and start something new, right? So then all of their children are now our age. And now we're given the opportunity of saying, okay, well, like there's still so much work to be done. They did their best. They did an incredible job, but we really need to like be very loud about what families need. And I think that you were doing that from the very get-go. And it has paved a way for people like me who were right there with you to justify investing. Because guess what? Lubbock has been doing it for a while. Okay. There's no excuse that our Midland people should not have to go to Lubbock
Okay.
to
Yeah,
do
great.
that, whatever they call it. It's like an indoor like play space where they have make believe or whatever.
Mhm.
There's no reason why all of our Midlanders feel like they need to go to Lubbock
Yep.
to do that.
Yeah, I
And
drove 2 hours to go and take Lorenzo at 2 years old to the little gym in Lubbock.
yeah.
Like I literally bought the same things that I started with. And I know that, even though my son is 9, I mean, of course, like now I got the go-karts. So now like I got the big go-karts in Odessa. So I wanted that for him
Yeah.
because he's going to be the next, Mario Andretti. I mean,
Yes.
I literally thought, okay, what's the next thing that we don't have in this town? Yes, it's in Odessa,
Mhm.
but again, the towns are going to connect. I mean, they're touching. So, and yeah, we don't touch each other. Like we don't go into other
Yeah.
turfs, but to me, like you do have these moms that are so bright and so intelligent that come here because they're in oil and gas, or they find themselves now having to take that seat back and they have
Mhm.
to go into a different realm of children,
Mhm.
and bright moms and bright educated mothers, and to me, that have the heart, that have that spitzvah and that sass, that they know they can bring something and bring it to the children in this town. I mean, I love it. Like, I don't have
Mhm.
much competition
Yeah.
because it's expensive and there should be
Yes.
only one in town. It's hard to compete with anyone that would do another $5 million urban air. I
Mhm.
mean, it's stupid to do another one, but because you don't have that demographic, but we at least needed it now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sorry, there's a lot of oil field billionaires that could have brought urban air before me. And I am the very first out of all the urban airs to own a little gym, to own an urban air. I was the very first one that raised my hand and said, hey, I want to own an urban air. The very first mom, a little gym owner, like a little gym owner. And it doesn't make huge money, but was able to sit there and say, okay, bet on me. Michael Browning, like, give me this franchise. I know I can bring it to Midland. And they told me, not really. Like, okay. And I had to not convince them, but they understood that it was going to be a challenge because the oil industry crashes and it comes back up and it crashes. And okay, how much investment, how much debt do you want to take on, Gina Marie?
Mhm.
And I'll take that on. If I do one thing in life, and I don't know, everyone knows some of my backstory, but I'm a risk taker just because God gave me the opportunity one time to live or die on one day, a very, really serious day in my life. And I have never, ever, ever not taken a risk after that day. And I believe in God. I truly believe that He has given me the strength to not be stressed out, to know that there's a better path, to know that I will follow Him and lead Him to a better opportunity. If you do your heart in it, you're going to have your heart in it. You're going to have that you're going to have it. Something will happen good out of it. If He leads you, you will follow and you'll be good. And so I did that through COVID. I did it through urban air. I thought it was going to break me. And then stupidly enough, I was like, let's do another urban air. And I went and did Jackson, Mississippi. And I feel like the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Girl, how many do you own?
Oh, 3. So
No
Jackson,
way.
Yeah, so Jackson, Mississippi is just like a Midland, but to me, Jackson, Mississippi is a very crime-ridden, low income
Mhm.
demographic,
I've been there before. Yeah.
American community. And I could have built this Jackson, Mississippi in Madison, Mississippi, which Madison looks like a Midland and Jackson looks like, the Odessa. And point blank, I put it right in the smack dab in the middle of probably the worst part of town. And I put an urban area right in the middle of crime-ridden Jackson. And we've gone through some issues over there. But the reason I did that is because I knew darn well that those little kids needed to have a safe
Yes.
space. They knew they needed a safe space. They needed to have protection. I have the police department there every day. I have Capitol Police watching that business. They do a great job. Birthdays are being done there. The family's coming together. Madison and Jackson get to go in together in the same space. And if you know Mississippi,
That's
there's
hard.
still this, yeah, it's
Yep.
kind of hard. So we're sitting there in Jackson. So I'm truly a mom that finds a location, a demographic that I feel like just needs it. And I feel like these are the best businesses because I'm sorry, it's great to have a trampoline park. It's great to have a slide place. It's great to have a go-kart place, but urban air, and I'm going to brag on this franchise
Please.
because Michael Browning, it's to me, the best thought process could be put into one space. If you got 55,000 square feet, you should put go-karts. You should put a trampoline. You should put the basketball courts. You should put the bumper cars. You should put the mini go-karts, and you should put like a Skyward, which is a trademark, flying through the sky. And then they also have the flying tubes. I mean, it's my fly. He literally put everything into one adventure park. And so our adventure park also has bowling alleys. Some have
Mhm.
bowling alleys. I mean, it's like you mixed all these family entertainments and you put them in one space, and urban air is truly the best. Now, is it the most challenging place to find employment? Yes.
Yeah.
It is the most challenging. I have a cafe, I have birthday party revenue, I have walk-in, I have safety that we tout safety as the highest level of safety. So I thought I was going to be nervous about a broken arm in the gymnastics world in little gym. Talk about another safety level. And so we are a high standard, and I feel like it's harder than a synergy. It's harder than a bowling alley. It's harder than even a trampoline park, because we are harnessing you up, putting you up on a wall, putting you through the sky. I mean, my son even is there. Like, my son literally goes on these things every day. And I think,
What
okay,
a cool childhood you're giving him.
I am. But he knows he has to clean the toilets, or he has to go and work in that cafe before he goes and plays. I mean, he
Love
literally
that.
will. Yeah, you have
Love
to.
that.
And so I grew up as my father showed me the way of entrepreneurship. I
Wow.
lived, my life looks just like what I grew up. My father gave me the exact same.
Tell me about your
tools.
dad.
My dad created, he opened up a conserving device, thought it wasn't made right. He created his own conserving oxygen device, and 17 patents later,
No way.
yeah. I mean, I lived in nursing homes with my dad providing oxygen tanks. I mean, he had businesses, and very successful man.
I feel like you would
Very
probably
successful.
agree with this when you, sometimes my husband looks at me nuts because he's like,
That's a
where,
compliment.
I know
My
it
husband
is.
looks
But
at me like, oh crap,
he'll
what
be like,
now?
but he pointed this out to me the other day. He was like, you think so differently. And I think when you've done a business, like we've talked about this before, you've done a business, then you're like, okay, well, it's not that hard. Because then you're like, okay, all I have to do is do this a little bit differently, and I can do something different. And like, obviously the day-to-day minutia of what every single day looks like is what makes it difficult to own a business. But to think like an entrepreneur is something that, not to sound elitist, but you either have it or you don't.
Oh yeah.
You either think in that way or you don't. And this is where the long-standing oil and gas arguments come from, where it's operations versus field, right? The guys in the field are saying, you don't know what you're talking about because you've never been out here pulling airlines. Like I used to be in sales for oil and gas, pulling airlines out and doing gas detection. And then before that, it was geological science, where I was picking up cuttings and taking them back to our geological lab. There's difference between operations and field personnel, right? So when you have the office people telling you to do something, oftentimes they can be disconnected from what's actually happening.
Yes.
And as an entrepreneur, you have to do both. You have to be able to prioritize what the customer is saying, and you have to be able to prioritize what your bottom line is and what a business owner should do.
Right.
But I think what makes the most successful entrepreneurs is being so in tune with what your preferences are and having a really small group of people that you can be like, what do y'all think about this? Because if it weren't for my 3 best friends, I don't know if I could truly feel as confident as what I do every day. And if it weren't for like my friends in business like you, I mean, I don't know if I would feel as comfortable going into business. And like, we talk all the time. Like, we were at F45 the other day, and I was like, guess what? I had to fire so-and-so. And you were like, makes sense. And I was like, okay, great. I don't feel crazy.
Validation.
You know? And it's a very lonely thing. You know, before we started interviewing, we were talking about how lonely it can be as an entrepreneur, because it's scary. And then I think if we were in a bigger city, it would be less so, because there's more women doing it. And not to like get on a soapbox, but being a woman in business in Midland, especially if you're working with women and children, it's often undervalued all the time. I cannot tell you how many dads have come up to me, sorry dads, but where they're like, oh yeah, I played high school football. You're teaching swimming. How is that any different? And I'm like, okay, you don't realize that not only did I swim in high school, I also got a scholarship to swim in college, but then also I have a master's degree in kinesiology. So like, I kind of know what I'm talking about. And I've been doing this since I was 13.
Yeah, educated women.
So like,
you
know,
and
so it's like, it's very difficult when you work with women and children, because it's just, generally speaking, whether people are acknowledging it or they're not. It's the work you do, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, oftentimes that can be undervalued. Even if you're a stay-at-home dad, even the work that a stay-at-home dad would do is often undervalued, because it seems simple, right? Providing stability for women and children and families in general is seen as simple, simplistic work, when really, I personally think that it's the most difficult work.
Oh, it's hardest work is to stay
exactly
and all day long.
Exactly. I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
No,
it's
hard.
a lot. It's hard.
That's why I have one.
I know.
I
That's what my mom did. Like
it's
it was just too much.
hard.
And you have to know your limits. And I think what has given us the opportunity is to be able to provide a sense of respite in some capacity
Mhm.
for families because we acknowledge how difficult the work of being a parent is.
Yes.
Even if you're like my brother-in-law is a single dad, like
Mhm.
to see him do the work of two people, not to say that, his ex doesn't do the work either. I'm just saying to see what I see him do, and I'm sure what she does also, it's difficult.
Mhm.
To do it on your own is difficult. To
Yep.
do it with a spouse is still difficult, even
Yes.
when you have shared resources.
Yep.
Um, if you're a grandparent or an aunt
Mhm.
raising children that
Yep.
are not necessarily your child, but they're in your life and that's
Mhm.
important, you have to have support services, which is the whole purpose of this podcast, right?
Agreed. Mhm.
To
But you're
shed
doing
light.
such a great service to do that. I
But to
love the fact that you're doing this because it came from someone of genuine experience and history and someone that's locally here. Like, you
Mhm,
know, the roots of the growth of this town. I came in 2011. So it's not my turf.
mhm.
It's my husband's turf, but you're here for a very long time. You understand how the growth of this community and where you want it projected. And you're putting a podcast together so that people can listen and moms and dads, I'm sure, can also grow into understanding how to get those resources. I mean, this is amazing. Like,
Thanks.
I'm super thrilled. Like, this should be the mom's page all the time. Like
Well, I
I
just think
love
it's
this.
helpful. I think it's
It's a very
helpful,
helpful.
especially if you're like moving from Denver or,
Yeah.
I have a lot of customers who are part of the Chevron. I guess Chevron moves people around quite
Mhm.
frequently. Like
Mhm.
I have one of my customers from Singapore who's moving from Singapore to Midland, and a lot of my customers from Nigeria. And like,
Mhm.
I can only imagine having to move because of your job,
Yep.
even if it's from Houston,
Yes.
not as dramatic as moving overseas. What most people want is they want resources. They need to know where their resources are.
For their kids.
And I
Right
think
off the bat. Yep.
yeah, and I think what's the most beneficial thing right now for the trajectory of mental health for parents is to
Mhm.
know where the resources are.
Mhm.
How is it being communicated? How
Mhm.
often is it being communicated? How much the community cares about them?
Yes.
Because if we don't have those three things, pessimism
Mhm.
is only going to breed.
Yeah.
And then people will go on the internet and say, there's nothing to do here.
Yep.
So on that note,
Oh, that was one thing that like got my goat. I mean, the
yes,
moment I open an Urban Era and I read on all the mom pages, there's nothing here in Midland.
sure.
Okay.
I said
Now what
this,
do I have to bring?
I know.
So I'm like, what is there? What are we missing?
It-
And I mean, honestly, you can't tell me there's nothing. I mean, I'm sorry. There's a amazing putt place, Green Acres. There's outdoor go-karts. There's the Urban Air. There's, little gym for a play area. There's
Opportunity Park,
I mean,
even. So like,
your,
think, oh yeah.
swimming school. Like,
But think
what else
about,
is there?
and then
We
think
need
about our children who have
great parks.
disabilities too. Like the Opportunity Park was,
Opportunity Park or what's it called? The one that like
We Rock Spectrum.
we wrote the picture. I mean,
Yes.
look at all these people. These are parents
Mhm.
that knew that we were missing opportunities to build and they brought it here, like
Mhm.
literally homegrown.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's something that like, I think that's what Midland is so special.
I
Like,
agree.
I absolutely love this town. I mean, being from a large, massive city
Mhm.
like New York and Brooklyn, I mean, I would never be this successful if I was living in something like that. I would
Mhm.
never been able to start something like that back there. And thank God I met my husband and I got the opportunity to do this career. And yes, it was breeded on one child that gave me the adrenaline to go and take the risk. But that is what I see in every business owner in Midland, whether you're in oil and gas or you're not, or the people that started, I mean, just the paint shop, like,
Mhm.
the pottery. I mean, like, I love that. Like, you get to meet the owner when you walk in the door and they
Mhm.
love their business and it's still there and it looks great and they're invested in it. And I don't know, Midland is just special and
I think
I
that
just love this town. I
I
do. And
agree.
I gloat about it. I mean, you don't get that. I don't get that in Jackson, Mississippi.
Mm-mm.
They hit on them more than, it comes in. They literally want us out. They don't want us in that town. I mean, I literally was told I picked the wrong town to put my business in. Wild, right? I
But
mean,
you build a community because then you're able to take
yeah.
two different areas that probably wouldn't interact with each other.
Yep.
And you created the concept of there's a lot of data behind this, the third space. And I learned about this in grad school. What it is it's creating the opportunity that is outside of church or religious organizations, school,
Mhm.
and home life for
Yes.
families and communities to interact with each
Yes.
other that they may have not been interacting
Yep.
prior. And there's been a lot of research from a couple different organizations. I won't get into it right now, but basically what they're saying is that is what crumbled communities within 2020
Mm.
because the lack of that third space
Mhm.
created this loneliness
Yep.
epidemic. And,
Yeah. That's
I
spot
just
on.
think
Very spot
I
on.
know, and
Mhm.
but it makes sense though,
Yeah.
like what we were feeling collectively, just as
Mhm.
business owners too in 2020.
Mhm.
But also, it makes so much more sense because it only validates the decision making that we've made
Oh,
before.
yeah.
So, on that
Yep.
note,
Yep.
what gives you hope for the future of Midland? Is there something that you would say that just makes you really encouraged
Mhm.
based off of your work, based off your life, that makes you say, you know what, everything's going to be okay? Because I know you have a great faith in God, but
Yeah.
what would you
Um,
say is most exciting to you about the future of our community?
I think the political nature right now, it's changed. So I feel like everyone's got this new revived hope, excitement. I know there's business deals going on just in 2 days
Mhm.
since the election. So I feel that energy. As a business owner, I don't know, I feel it. I'm excited about what 4 years are going to look like, but the reason why I'm excited about the 4 years is maybe not so much who's the president, but in regards to if this is the time that Midland is going to go crazy and bring in that really amazing, unique individuals that are educated and they want to stay here. And I'm hoping that the families start living here and staying here and they don't transfer out. I'm hoping that Midland grows because of what in the political nature has happened. I would like to see more people call Midland home.
I agree.
That's what I'm hoping for. I hope this 4 years gives our energy community, our industry, the foundation that it doesn't get shooked
Hmm.
and rocked. I think that is what I'm hoping for. I think that's going to happen,
Hmm.
where we can have the foundation of not a boom, but just it leveled, and then the parents and the families and the dads and the moms move here together,
Hmm.
and they live here and they call this home,
Hmm.
and maybe they get stuck here longer than a turnover of 4 years.
Hmm.
If that's the case, then not our businesses do better, but I feel like it doesn't feel so waved
Yeah,
in.
because that's what it feels like. At
Yeah.
least it has been since we both started.
Hmm.
Is going through two different administrations. It's weird
Hmm.
because we often see things that the average American doesn't
Yeah.
because we have to think, okay, I don't know about you, but I'm always thinking the next year.
Hmm.
And then like, okay, what am I going to do that next year? And then sometimes during the midst of the year that you're in, you're like, oh man, that's not going to work. So you have to move things,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
it's very interesting going through two different administrations because
Yeah.
there's so much pivoting
Yeah.
that you have to do.
Yeah.
And like you have to be I was talking to the owners of La Bebe the other day,
Mhm.
and they were saying, you know, we they buy a whole year in advance their clothing. So like they have to think a year in advance, what is my consumer going to want? And I agree with you. I feel like
Wow.
that's just what people in
Yeah.
Midland are finally doing.
Yeah.
My father-in-law would always say, like back when they first moved here,
Mhm.
40 plus years ago, they said that people weren't really thinking about the next year because you know
Yeah.
everyone was just trying to do their best because they knew oil and gas. People would always say it was going to be a ghost town, right?
Mhm.
That this is the first time that people are actually energetic about the future of Midland. That's
Yes.
what brings me hope for Midland is
Mhm.
that I have personally seen over the last, 6 years in business here in Midland that the attitude is changing. I feel like there's more energy where people are willing to make commitments
Yes. It's a commitment.
past
Mhm.
4 years
Yes.
or past even 10 years. I mean,
Yep.
we've interviewed Steve Bowerman, the president of the hospital, and like
Mhm.
Jeff Beard, who's the president of the
Mhm.
Zoo Midland.
Mhm.
And they're talking about things and programs that they're planning to do
Mhm.
like decades in advance. And just based off of observations, I'm not from here either, that this may be the first time where people are actually doing that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and just civilians doing that. I'm not
Right.
talking about Chevron
No,
saying
not the companies.
we're doing
The
this.
people.
It's
Like, yes.
people that are saying
Yeah.
we're going to invest in our community. This is how
Mhm.
we're doing it. And I know the family foundations have been doing that for forever,
Yes.
but they can't be the only ones
Right.
doing
Right.
that.
Absolutely.
And for
Yep.
a long time, they have been the muscle
Mhm.
behind us advancing our community. And
Mhm.
we are so thankful for that. But at
Yeah,
some
thank God
point,
for them.
we have to
But
help
we have to help
them.
them. Mhm. Yeah.
because it's the
Yep.
individuals who
Mhm.
come together collectively that can make it
Yep.
more powerful.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much
yes,
for coming.
it was awesome.
I'm so appreciative of you
Yes,
being
absolutely.
here.
It was a pleasure. I'm excited. This is
And
gonna be great.
over the next couple, of months, we'll keep in touch and just keep sharing on all the fun things that are going on with the little gym
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
urban air. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
All right.
Bye,
Catch you later.
friend.
Bye. Good job.
All right, we did it.
You
That was
killed
fast.
it.